Hello everyone, Pandurang here. Now we are going to listen to podcast news which includes important national, international and business, economy, news. While walking in the morning or evening, while cooking, cycling or during free time you can listen. It will enhance your learning and understanding of various accents and pronunciations. Listening improves the quality of communication and comprehension. Before going ahead, I would like to welcome you all to the virtual school. A new way of learning and teaching, with the vision of let's grow together. Our mission is to learn how to learn and teach how to teach. So stay tuned. And here we go. 6th July 2021. Important national news. Tribal rights activist Father Stan Swamy dies in Mumbai hospital. 84-year-old priest was accused in Bhima-Koregaon violence case. Crusader for tribal rights, a file photo of civil rights activist Father Stan Swamy, who passed away on Monday. Pti. Special correspondent Mumbai. Tribal rights activist Father Stan Swamy, 84, who was an accused in the Bhima-Koregaon caste violence case, passed away on Monday afternoon, the Bombay High Court was told. Dr. Ian D'Souza, medical director of the Holy Family Hospital where Fr. Swamy was admitted on May 29 after having contracted COVID-19 while in Taloja jail, told the division bench of Justices S.S. Shinde and N.J. Jamdar that he had pulmonary infection, post-COVID-19 complications in the lungs and pneumonia. Dr. D'Souza said the Jesuit priest suffered cardiac arrest at 4:30 am on July 4 and was put on ventilator. He never regained consciousness. Senior advocate Mihir Desai, representing Fr. Swamy, said, "We have no grievance against the hospital. However, we cannot say the same thing about the National Investigation Agency, NIA, and state authorities. I am seeking a judicial probe into this as there was a delay of 10 days in taking him to the hospital from jail." The bench said, "This is shocking news. We passed that order, to take him to the hospital of his choice. We have no words to express our condolences." Mr. Desai said the NIA did not seek his custody even for a day and he was sent to Taloja jail as soon as he was arrested from Ranchi on 9 October 2020. He requested the court to pass an order to hand over the social worker's body to Father Fraser, his friend and former principal of Xavier's College. Mr. Desai sought the submission of all medical reports and the post-mortem report to the court. Fr. Swamy was shifted to the private hospital from Taloja jail on May 29 after directions from the High Court. He tested positive for COVID-19 on May 30. He also had lower back pain and bilateral hearing loss among other ailments, and was suffering from Parkinson's disease. His request for a sipper to drink water was turned down. The Jesuit priest, through video conferencing, told the court on May 21, "I am eating less and my co-accused are worried about me. I would prefer to suffer and die like this in Taloja jail than be admitted to JJ hospital. Only one thing that I would request the judiciary is to consider interim bail. That is the only request." CBSE to cut syllabus, hold board exams in November and April. New assessment scheme for classes 10 and 12 this year. Special correspondent New Delhi. With continuing school closures and examination disruptions due to COVID-19, the Central Board of Secondary Education, CBSE, has issued a new assessment scheme for class 10 and 12 students this year. In 2021-22, it will reduce the syllabus, hold board examinations twice during the year in different formats, and ensure continuous recording of internal assessment scores in order to have a variety of options to calculate a final score at the end of the year, according to a notification issued on Monday night. Result of uncertainty. The announcement comes after widespread uncertainty during the 2020-21 academic year, when the second wave of COVID-19 caused the postponement and then cancellation of year-end board examinations. The CBSE finally asked schools to use the combination of scores from class 10, 11 and 12 and internal marks to calculate the final results. The syllabus for the board examination 2021-22 will be rationalized similar to that of the last academic session, said the notification. Last year, the examination syllabus was reduced by 30%. The CBSE has divided the 2021-22 academic year into 2 terms with 50% of the syllabus to be covered in each term, with board exams to be held at the end of each term, according to the notification. The first term exam will be held on a flexible schedule between November to December 2021, with a window period of 4 to 8 weeks for schools situated in different parts of the country. It will be a 90-minute paper with multiple choice questions only, likely to be conducted in schools with the supervision of external superintendents. The second term exam will be held in March to April 2022 in examination centers, and is likely to be a 2-hour exam with various question formats. In case the pandemic situation is not conducive for such a long, descriptive exam to be held, the second term exam will also be conducted with a multiple choice question format. The CBSE will issue guidelines to make internal assessments, practicals and project work more credible and valid to ensure fair distribution of marks. SC aghast that Section 6(6) of IT Act is still used provision was struck down 6 years ago. Krishnadas Rajagopal, New Delhi. The Supreme Court on Monday found it distressing, shocking, and terrible that people were still booked and tried under Section 6(6) of the Information Technology (IT) Act even 6 years after it struck down the provision as unconstitutional and a violation of free speech. Section 6(6) had prescribed 3 years imprisonment if a social media message caused annoyance or was found grossly offensive. The court, in the Shreya single judgment authored by Justice Rohinton F. Nariman in March 2015, had concluded that the provision was vague and worded arbitrarily. On Monday, Senior Advocate Sanjay Parikh and Advocate Tapan Abhat, for the People's Union for Civil Liberties, PUCL, said the number of cases registered under Section 6(6) had actually increased post the judgment. What is going on is terrible, distressing. We will issue notice, Justice Nariman, heading a 3-judge bench comprising Justices K.M. Joseph and B.R. Gavai, exclaimed. Only as a footnote, Attorney General K.K. Venugopal pointed out that law books published post the verdict featured the non-existent Section 6(6) in full. The police officer, while registering a case, looks at only the section in the main text. The fact that the section has been struck down is given only as a footnote, he submitted. Twitter failed to comply with IT rules, Centre Ministry files affidavit in Delhi HC. Staff reporter, New Delhi. The centre on Monday informed the Delhi High Court that microblogging site Twitter had failed to comply with India's law regulating tech companies, losing its immunity as intermediaries. The Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, MeitY, in an affidavit filed before the court, stated that despite 3 months' time being granted to all significant social media intermediaries, SSMIs, to comply with the Information Technology, IT, Rules 2021, Twitter had failed to fully comply with the same. Officer's resignation. Twitter, last week, had informed the High Court that the interim resident grievance officer and the interim nodal contact person in India had resigned from their positions in June. The tech giant stated that it was in the final stages of appointing replacements. Meanwhile, the grievances of Indian users are being addressed by the grievance officer. The MeitY, however, pointed out that as per the details gleaned from Twitter's website, grievances from India were currently being handled by its personnel situated in the United States, which amounts to non-compliance with the IT Rules 2021. Facial recognition used to verify JAB beneficiaries, govt.No legal order for use of the technology, says RTI response. A health worker administering vaccine to a beneficiary during a vaccination drive in Delhi on Monday. Shiv Kumar Pushpaka. Special correspondent, New Delhi. Even though the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, MoHFW, admitted in a recent RTI query response to the use of facial recognition technology, FRT, for online verification of beneficiaries at vaccination centers, it failed to provide any legislative or legal order that authorized the use of such technology. The MoHFW also said no privacy impact assessment of the use of FRT was conducted prior to its deployment. Facial recognition authentication is used as one of the methods for Aadhaar authentication for online verification of beneficiary prior to COVID-19 vaccination, wherein facial template is captured and sent to UIDAI for verification of image of beneficiary, the ministry said in response to an RTI filed by the not-for-profit Internet Freedom Foundation, IFF. It also stated that no additional procurement had been made for the implementation of FRT-based verification, and a pilot project for such authentication is still underway. LDF leaders should face trial, says SC. Current Education Minister is among those facing charges for vandalism in Kerala Assembly in 2015. Court wrap: V. Sivankutti trying to break the cordon in the Kerala Assembly on 13 March 2015. File photo. Krishnadas Rajagopal, New Delhi. The Supreme Court on Monday said it will not condone the behavior of Kerala's Left Democratic Front, LDF, leaders, including the current Education Minister V. Sivankutti, who created a ruckus and indulged in vandalism on the floor of the Legislative Assembly, disrupting the presentation of the budget in 2015. The televised images from the day of the incident, during the United Democratic Front government's tenure, show legislators coming to blows in the House and hurling chairs, computers and other public property, soon after the then Finance Minister K.M. Mani began his budget speech. The LDF MLAs were protesting against Mr. Mani, citing the corruption allegations against him. The MLAs are facing charges of criminal trespass, mischief and destruction of public property. The state government and the accused have separately appealed to the court for withdrawal of the case. A bench of Justices D.Y. Chandrachud and M.R. Shah, however, took a prima facie view against the conduct of the MLAs. Justice Chandrachud said legislators accused of destroying public property should face trial or there would be absolutely no deterrent to this kind of behavior. During the hearing, the court disagreed with the Kerala government's view that the then opposition MLAs were only acting in public interest and exercising their right to protest. What is the larger public interest in obstructing the presentation of the state's financial budget? Prima facie, we have to take a very strict view of such behavior. We will not condone such behavior by MLAs, throwing mix chairs on the floor of the House, Justice Chandrachud told senior advocate Ranjit Kumar, who appeared for the state. Justice Shah wanted to know what message the MLAs had intended to give the public with their behavior. These are people's representatives. What will the people think seeing their leaders behave like this on the floor of the House? Justice Shah asked. Locusts sternly questioned. When Mr. Kumar said prior sanction of the Speaker was required before registration of criminal cases against the MLAs, Justice Shah questioned the state government's locust standi in seeking withdrawal of the case against the legislators. Why are you, the state, saying all this? It is for the accused to make the plea, and not for the state. The state cannot seek withdrawal of the case. That is the prerogative of the public prosecutor, Justice Shah repeatedly pointed out. Justice Chandrachud said the case would be listed on July 15. A.P. Telangana dispute over Krishna water intensifies both states' right to central ministries seeking action. B. Chandrasekhar, Hyderabad. Andhra Pradesh and Telangana have intensified the dispute of sharing of the Krishna waters, particularly in the wake of works on the Rayalasima Lift Irrigation Scheme, LIS, taken up by Andhra Pradesh and power generation at 3 interstate projects by Telangana, by shooting letters to the Ministry of Jal Shakti, the Ministry of Environment and Forests and filing contempt plea in the National Green Tribunal, NGT. Monday saw hectic activity with Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister Y.S. Jagan Mohan Reddy addressing separate letters to Union Ministers of Jal Shakti and Environment and Forests. Contempt petition. It followed Telangana filing a contempt petition in the matter of LIS works in the NGT Southern Zone bench in Chennai and writing letters to the Member Secretary of Expert Appraisal Committee, EAC, of MOIF and the Krishna River Management Board, KRMB. In his letter to Jal Shakti Minister Gajendra Singh Shekhawat, Mr. Reddy sought notifying the jurisdiction of the KRMB covering all offtakes of irrigation and power on common reservoirs to stop indiscriminate drawal solely for power generation by Telangana. Meanwhile, a few senior engineers in the irrigation department of Telangana, who spoke to The Hindu, said Mr. Reddy's letter to the MOIF amounted to openly influencing an independent committee, EAC, for taking decision in favor of Andhra Pradesh by intervening in the proceedings of the panel and instruct it to clear the project list. 12 MLAs suspended for a year from Maharashtra Assembly. BJP MLAs were abusing the presiding officer. First day, first show, CM Uddhav Thackeray and other leaders on the first day of the monsoon session on Monday. PTI. Staff reporter Mumbai. 12 BJP MLAs have been suspended from the Maharashtra Assembly for 1 year for abusing and misbehaving with the presiding officer in chair, both inside and outside the Assembly. The Assembly also passed 2 resolutions asking the Union government to intervene in the issue of reservation to other backward classes, OBCs, and the Maratha community. Parliamentary Affairs Minister Anil Parab presented a resolution to suspend the MLAs and the House passed it on a majority vote. The BJP, while boycotting the House, termed it an act to suppress its voice and an attempt to bring down the number of the opposition. The MLAs, Sanjay Kute, Ashish Shela, Abhimanyu Pawar, Girish Mahajan, Atul Bhadkalkar, Harish Pimple, Jaikumar Raval, Yogesh Sagar, Narayan Kuchi, Banti Bhangadia, Parag Alvani and Ram Satpuke, will be barred from entering the Assembly premises for the next 12 months. The ruckus inside the Assembly took place as the tripartite Maha Vikas Aghadi, MVA, government brought a resolution seeking empirical data on OBCs from the Union government. Leader of the opposition Devendra Fadnavis raised a point of objection before Senior Minister Chhagan Bhujbal presented the resolution, claiming that the state government did not follow the Supreme Court's directions for 15 months. After allowing Mr. Fadnavis to speak, Shiv Sena MLA Bhaskar Jadhav, who was the presiding officer in the Speaker's chair, directed Mr. Bhujbal to read out the reply and present the resolution. As he denied Mr. Fadnavis an opportunity to reply to Mr. Bhujbal, agitated BJP MLAs rushed in front of his chair and smacked the mic. They also tried to lift the scepter in front of the Speaker's chair. The House was adjourned for 10 minutes after the resolution was passed. It was then adjourned 3 times for 15 minutes and once for 30 minutes. The Assembly and Council also passed a resolution to ease the 50% limit on reservation to ensure socially and economically backward class, SEBC, be given reservation benefits. HC to hear UP govt on conversion issue. Delhi Police directed to ensure safety of women. Sobam Rocky Singh, New Delhi. The Delhi High Court on Monday extended the interim direction to the Delhi Police to ensure the safety of a woman from Shahjahanpur in Uttar Pradesh, who had converted from Hinduism to Islam on her own accord, till July 22. The next hearing has been scheduled for that day. Justice Rekha Pali said she could not pass any direction in relation to the case without first hearing the Uttar Pradesh Police. As no counsel for the police was present during the video conferencing hearing, Justice Pali ordered that a copy of the woman's petition be served to Standing Council of Uttar Pradesh in the Supreme Court. Before any orders are passed, against respondents 4, UP Police, and 5, UP Government, which is situated beyond the territorial jurisdiction of this court, it is deemed appropriate to hear respondents 4 and 5, the High Court said. On July 1, the court directed the Delhi Police to take adequate steps to protect the life and safety of the 29-year-old woman. Renu Gangwar, in her petition, said she converted from Hinduism to Islam on May 27 of her own free will and without any threat or coercion from anyone. Following this, she changed her name to Aisha Alvi, which was published in newspapers. Ms. Alvi, who is a resident of Kilhar, Shahjahanpur, and working in Delhi, allegedly started getting calls from different reporters requesting a meeting. However, even after her refusal, a reporter allegedly came to her place in Kilhar and took photographs and videos without her permission, she said. The petitioner, Ms. Alvi, is facing extreme threat to her life and that of her immediate family members who are being witch hunted by the officials of the Uttar Pradesh Police as also by the media and the vigilant groups, she stated in her plea. One reporter allegedly demanded money while threatening to publish the news of her conversion. When she refused, he made threats again. Thereafter, he took 20,000 rupees from her. The petition, filed through Advocate Kamlesh Kumar Mishra and Nitin Kumar Nayak, said. Ms. Alves said she was an adult and protected by the constitution to choose her own faith, and she cannot be targeted and harassed for the choice she makes with regard to the religion she follows. She urged the Delhi High Court to protect her from being taken away from its jurisdiction by force or coercion and or by way of any other illegal means by the agencies of the state or any other person. SC describes plea on toolkit as frivolous. Legal correspondent, New Delhi. The Supreme Court on Monday reminded a person who took offense to a Congress toolkit that India is a democracy where he can choose to ignore something he does not like or agree with. The petitioner, Shashank Shekhar Jha, wanted a national investigation agency probe into the toolkit which allegedly dealt with the government's handling of COVID. Mr. Jha said the Congress party's registration should be suspended if the anti-national acts were proved. A bench of Justices D.Y. Chandrachud and M.R. Shah found the petition frivolous. Mr. Jha, if you don't like the toolkit, you can ignore the toolkit, Justice Chandrachud advised the petitioner. Justice Chandrachud said parties engage in political propaganda, and it was left to each individual to engage with or ignore them. Mr. Jha, however, referred to how Singapore had objected to propaganda. Oh, India is a democracy, you know, Justice Chandrachud replied. Mr. Jha had even suggested a preliminary inquiry into the toolkit to see if any offences under sedition law or the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act were made out. The time of the Supreme Court is taken up by such frivolous petitions, Justice Chandrachud said. The court allowed the petitioner to withdraw his petition. Thank you. International news. Over 1,000 Afghan troops flee to Tajikistan with supply lines strained. Afghan forces have been crumbling in the face of the Taliban onslaught. Tight spot. Afghan commandos arriving in Kaseya, the capital of Badakhshan province, on Sunday. REUTERS Afghanistan Ministry of Defense. Agents France Press Kabul. More than 1,000 Afghan troops fled into neighboring Tajikistan on Monday following clashes with the Taliban, as the insurgents amassed momentum on the battlefield. The exodus of troops followed another weekend of fighting across much of the northern countryside where the Taliban have overrun dozens of districts, spurring fears that Afghan forces are in crisis. They did not want to surrender. They had asked for reinforcements but their call was ignored, said Abdul Basir, a soldier based with the battalion in Badakhshan province that had members flee over the border. The US announced on Friday that it had handed over Bagram Air Base, the center of its operations, to Afghan security forces, effectively wrapping up operations in the country following nearly 2 decades of fighting. Tajikistan's National Security Committee said 1,037 Afghan government troops had fled into the ex-Soviet country to save their lives after clashes with the Taliban during the night. Counterattack. Taking into account the principle of good neighborliness and adhering to the position of non-interference in the internal affairs of Afghanistan, the military personnel of the Afghan government forces were allowed to enter Tajik territory, said the statement, published by Tajikistan's state information agency. Afghan troops had already crossed into Tajikistan following earlier clashes that saw the Taliban take control of a major border crossing between the countries. The Afghan government has vowed to launch a counter-offensive in the north. Hamdullah Mohib, the country's national security advisor, told Russia's RIA news agency that an operation was absolutely in the works. Already thinly stretched with supply lines strained, Afghan security forces have been crumbling in the face of the Taliban onslaught, with several bases and outposts surrendering to the insurgents without firing a shot. Afghan forces have lost their morale, said analyst Uta Nouri in Kabul. They are confused. In almost every district that the Taliban capture, they send a team of elders to talk to the soldiers and get them to surrender. It is an emergency situation for the Afghan government. They need to step up their counter-offensive as soon as possible, he added. With vital air cover from the Americans massively curtailed by the closure of the Bagram base, the Taliban pressed on with their offensive across the north over the weekend, seizing most of Badakhshan and Takar provinces with government forces holding little more than the provincial capitals. The speed and ease of the Taliban's effective takeover of the provinces represent a massive psychological blow to the Afghan government. Both provinces had once served as the strongholds for the anti-Taliban Northern Alliance during the gruesome civil war in the 1990s and were never routed by the militants. The dire situation in the north was accompanied by reports that the Taliban were also inching closer to the provincial capitals in their southern strongholds of Kandahar and Helmand, with key districts on the outskirts of both cities taken by the group. "We are so tired of this war. At least today the right thing was done, and one side should take control," said Shir Mohammad Barakzai, a resident of Helmand's Nawar district that was seized by the Taliban early on Monday. Since May 1st, when the US military began its final withdrawal, Afghan troops and the Taliban have clashed fiercely across the rugged countryside. Armed men kidnapped 140 school students in NigeriaPolice say they rescued 26 people, including a woman. Prime targets: schoolboys being escorted after their release by abductors in Kaseya, Nigeria, in this file photo. AP Sunday Alamba. Agents France Press Kaduna. Heavily armed men kidnapped 140 students from a boarding school in northwestern Nigeria on Monday, a school official said, the latest in a wave of mass abductions targeting school children and students. Criminal gangs often attack villages to loot, steal cattle and abduct for ransom in northwest and central Nigeria, but since the start of the year they have increasingly targeted schools and colleges. The attackers opened fire and overpowered security guards after storming the Bethel Baptist High School in Kaduna State in the early hours of Monday, abducting most of the 165 pupils boarding there overnight. The kidnappers took away 140 students. Only 25 students escaped. "We still have no idea where the students were taken," Emmanuel Paul, a teacher at the school, said. "Tactical police teams went after the kidnappers," he said. "We are still on the rescue mission." Police said they had safely rescued 26 people, including a woman. Around 1,000 students and pupils have been abducted in Nigeria since December. Most have been released after negotiations with local officials, although some are still being held. Often, gangs target rural schools and colleges, where students stay in dormitories and security is light, allowing them to easily transport large numbers of victims to forest hideouts to negotiate ransoms. The kidnapping of Nigerian school children first made international headlines in 2014 when jihadist group Boko Haram snatched nearly 300 schoolgirls from a rural school in Chibok. Monday's attack was the fourth mass school kidnapping in Kaduna State since December. China wants to expand ties with Europe, Xi tells Macron. MerkelBeijing seeks an unbiased environment for Chinese firms. Reuters Beijing. Chinese President Xi Jinping on Monday told French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Angela Merkel he hoped China and Europe would expand cooperation to better respond to global challenges, state broadcaster CCTV reported. In a three-way video call, Mr. Xi also expressed the hope that Europeans can play a more active role in international affairs, achieve strategic independence and offer a fair, transparent and unbiased environment for Chinese companies, CCTV said. Ms. Merkel's office confirmed that the three leaders exchanged views on European Union-China relations. They also discussed international trade, climate protection and biodiversity, her office added in a statement. The conversation also revolved around cooperation in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, global vaccine supply, and international and regional issues. In May, the European Parliament halted ratification of a new investment pact with China until Beijing lifts sanctions on EU politicians. After cyber attack, hackers demand $70 million. Experts say over 1,000 firms affected after data stolen from US firm Kaseya. Agents France Press Washington. Hackers were on Monday demanding $70 million in Bitcoin in exchange for data stolen during an attack on a US IT company that has shuttered hundreds of Swedish supermarkets. Researchers believe more than 1,000 companies could have been affected by the attack on Miami-based firm Kaseya, which provides IT services to some 40,000 businesses around the world. The FBI warned on Sunday that the scale of the ransomware attack a form of digital hostage-taking where hackers encrypt victims' data and then demand money for restored access, is so large that it may be unable to respond to each victim individually. Russian link suspected. Sweden's Co-op supermarket chain was among the most high-profile victims, with a majority of their 800 stores still closed 3 days after the hack paralyzed its cash registers, spokesman Kevin Bell said. Mr. Bell stressed that the situation was looking positive compared to a few days ago, but a few hundred stores that have reopened were relying on alternative payment solutions, such as customers paying using their smartphones. Experts believe the attack was probably carried out by Evil, a Russian-speaking hacking group known as a prolific perpetrator of ransomware attacks. A post on Happy Blog, a site on the dark web previously associated with the group, claimed responsibility for the attack and said it had infected more than 1 million systems. The FBI believes that Evil, also known as Sodinokibi, was behind the attack last month on global meat processing giant JBS, which ended up paying $11 million in Bitcoin to the hackers. The blog post said the hackers would post a decryption tool online, so everyone will be able to recover from attack in less than an hour, if they were handed $70 million in Bitcoin. Learn to live with virus, Johnson tells Britons U.K. Plans to lift curbs from July 19th. Boris Johnson. Associated Press, London. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson confirmed on Monday that his government plans to scrap laws requiring face masks and social distancing later this month, though he acknowledged that lifting the restrictions will drive surging coronavirus cases even higher. Mr. Johnson said legal controls will be replaced by personal responsibility when the country moves to the final stage of its lockdown lifting roadmap. That is scheduled to happen on July 19th. Though he said a final decision would come on July 12th. This means people can throw away masks after months of enforced face covering, though businesses and transit operators may still require them, and they will still be recommended in some enclosed spaces. Mr. Johnson said he would set out how the country would learn to live with this virus, a major shift in tone from a leader who has previously painted COVID-19 as an enemy to be vanquished. I want to stress from the outset that this pandemic is far from over, he said, predicting that cases could hit 50,000 a day by July 19th. We must reconcile ourselves, sadly, to more deaths from COVID. Israel looks to renew law that keeps out Palestinian spouses. Critics call it a racist measure against the Arab minority. Associated Press, Jerusalem. Israel's parliament is set to vote on Monday on whether to renew a temporary law first enacted in 2003 that bars Arab citizens of Israel from extending citizenship or even residency to spouses from the occupied West Bank and Gaza. Critics, including many left-wing and Arab lawmakers, say it's a racist measure aimed at restricting the growth of Israel's Arab minority, while supporters say it's needed for security purposes and to preserve Israel's Jewish character. The law creates an array of difficulties for Palestinian families that span the war-torn and largely invisible frontiers separating Israel from East Jerusalem, the West Bank and Gaza, territories it seized in the 1967 war that the Palestinians want for a future state. You want your security, it's no problem, you can check each case by itself, said Kaseya Khatib. His wife of more than 15 years, from the West Bank city of Jenin, must regularly apply for permits to live with him and their 3 children in Israel. There's no need for this collective punishment just because you are Palestinian, he said. Israel's dominant right-wing parties strongly support the law, and it has been renewed every year since being enacted. But Israel's new government includes opponents of the measure, and the right-wing opposition led by former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned it won't provide the votes needed to renew the law. Ahead of the vote, PM Naftali Bennett called on Mr. Netanyahu to join him in renewing the law. Harming state security for a quarter of a political point is not the right thing to do, he said. Thank you. Economy News. Services shrink most since July. Survey-based June PMI for sector shows second successive contraction at 41.2. No takers, 4 of the 5 broad service areas shrank, with consumer services contracting quickest, PTI. Special Correspondent, New Delhi. India's services sector shrank the most last month since July 2020, with the survey-based IHS Markit Purchasing Managers Index, PMI, for services at 41.2, reflecting a second successive monthly contraction in new business and increased job shedding by firms. International demand for Indian services deteriorated further, with new export orders falling for the 16th straight month. The sharp contraction in the June services PMI followed May's 46.4. A reading above 50 denotes expansion and one below it signifies a contraction in business activity. Business activity and new orders decreased in 4 out of the 5 broad areas of the service economy, with the fastest rates of contraction registered in consumer services, IHS Markit said in a statement. Transport and storage was the only segment to post growth, the firm added. Jobs fell in tandem with new orders. The fall in employment was the 7th in consecutive months and the fastest over this period. The decline in jobs was widespread across the 5 monitored subsectors, and led by consumer services, it noted. The overall level of business sentiment was down for the 3rd month in a row in June, reaching its lowest mark since last August, IHS Markit added, with the COVID-19 pandemic seen as the main threat to the outlook. Uncertainty weighs. Uncertainty about the path of the pandemic restricted business confidence among services firms, who were generally neutral in their forecasts for output in the year ahead, said Polyana de Lima, Economics Associate Director at IHS Markit. June's manufacturing PMI had earlier slid to 48.4, and with services activity also retreating, the composite PMI output index declined from 48.1 in May to 43.1, again registering the sharpest contraction since July 2020. Global investors flagged some Atmanirbhar reforms. Plan holds negative consequences. Vikas Gupta, New Delhi. International trade and investment flows into India could be affected by several aspects of the Atmanirbhar Bharat program as they posed, perceived as well as real, challenges for global investors, the UK-India Business Council, UGC, said. The UGC stressed that some of the reforms announced under the program could have negative consequences for UK and all multinational companies, even as it took note of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's assertion that the Self-Reliant India program is about integrating with global supply chains, not isolating from them. Warning that the spate of unexpected and sharp increases in import tariffs could be counterproductive, the UGC has suggested ways to mitigate the new challenges posed by Atmanirbhar Bharat and urged the government to correct course. UK businesses must not be affected by restrictive measures, they have pleaded, possibly by creating a carve-out for them in the bilateral trade pact being negotiated. Strengths, not tariffs. India should attract investors due to its strengths rather than by using tariffs as a tool to push international businesses to invest and make in India. Moreover, the government of India should be flexible in its vocal for local approach, the UGC has underlined in a report highlighting British investors' views on the Atmanirbhar Bharat policy. To be a manufacturing hub, India will need to be part of international supply chains, which will mean importing as well as exporting. If tariffs make manufacturing in India too expensive, investors will go elsewhere, the report noted. Even if India chooses tariffs as a policy tool, it should signal how import duties will rise over the coming years so investors get an incentive and the time to create domestic supply chains, it added. It has to be recognized that certain aspects of the initiative have the potential to curtail international trade and investment, such as increased tariffs, non-tariff restrictions on imports, and import substitution, it emphasized. The ban on the sale of items such as Scotch whisky in the CSD canteens sends a warning signal, the council said, stressing that some products simply cannot be produced in India. Attempts to renegotiate power purchase agreements and ad hoc policy shifts are also unnerving for infrastructure investors, it indicated. While the campaign has opened up several sectors for foreign investors, including defense, atomic energy, agriculture, insurance, healthcare and civil aviation, the UGC has outlined concerns and challenges across sectors in its report titled, Road to a UK-India Free Trade Agreement, Enhancing the Partnership and Achieving Self-Reliance. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching this video as a podcast. Do like, share and comment. Press the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to get new notifications. Thank you. Take care and stay safe. God bless you all. Jai Mabadi. To download news and editorials in MP3, follow us on Telegram, Virtual School Official. The link is provided in the description below.